Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and welcome to another video. Today's video is going to be covering the patch 7.31c. It was just released today, and a lot of people were clamoring for a patch like this, not just because of the major it's coming up to make it a little bit more fresh, to nerf some of the things, but also to fix pubs in general, because at the beginning of 7.31, you saw a bunch of broken stuff like Storm Spirit zipping across the map, like Bat Rider with the shard just deleting people and stuff like that. Some of those things were fixed, but then over time, we've seen a lot of other broken things kind of come to fruition and come to the surface, mainly Tiny, Death Prophet, neutral creeps, Coddle, just kind of all those kinds of things. People just wanted them nerfed just for, the sake of pubs in general, if not also for the major. So we did see that. That's what this patch is. It's not a huge patch, but just kind of nerfing some of the things, buffing a few things here and there as well. So I'm just going to go over each one, kind of give you a brief summary of what that is. We're not going to go into too much detail, but just going to make it quick, easy, simple to digest and understand. So first, let's just jump into the item changes here. So first is Desolator. Desolator was kind of strong even before 7.31, and they buffed it, which was really crazy. They gave it this max stacks with every kill, so it was kind of surprising that they did that, and now they're just nerfing it a little bit because, Deso was even better than it was before, and now it's just kind of coming back a little bit. It's just not as good, but I still think this item is pretty good. Anybody that was buying Deso is still going to be buying Deso, I think. I don't think it's enough to actually make it worse. 5 damage, not that much. Eye of Scotty, a little bit of a change here. Kind of a buff, kind of a nerf. It just depends what the matchup is and what you're going against. Basically, the movement speed for melee and ranged heroes has been reduced. So basically, you don't slow as much, but the trade-off is you actually are making them attack slower. So the attack slow is actually increased. And that is good for heroes that want to man up against you. So basically this is not as good for chasing people down. So, it's not as good, if people just, they want to get in and they want to get out, but it is still good and actually even better for heroes that kind of just want to man up. People that just want to fight 1v1 and they buy a Scotty, it's even better because now your opponent is attacking even slower compared to before. So it's kind of an interesting change. Scotty's really, really good right now. I just think it's not as good, maybe like on Medusa and things like that, because you're generally not like manning up against Medusa, I think, in a lot of ways. You're kind of just trying to avoid her a little bit, kill the rest of her team, and then kill her, something like that, or just chain stun her and kill her full to zero without her attacking. If she just gets to sit there and attack, it's really bad for you. So I think this is kind of mainly a nerf to Medusa, to be honest. I think that's the main thing, because when Medusa buys this item now, like second item, you go Manta Scotty or something like that, it's insane what this hero does. You just can't run away from the hero. It's ridiculous. So this just changes that a little bit, makes the move speed slow a little bit lower and just a little bit better for attack speed slow for manning up. So that's Eye of Scotty. Spirit Vessel, just a slight nerf. I think this was pretty good against some heroes. I think it was bought a lot, but I don't really know that this needed to happen, but it was just a small nerf. I don't think it's a big deal. Satanic nerfed a little bit as well. Satanic's been a pretty popular and good item for probably the last year, so they're just nerfing it a little bit. Urn kind of going along with the Spirit Vessel as well. And then Vlad's and Helm of the Overlord and Wraith Pact, which are the two items that Vlad's goes into or upgrades into. All of these were kind of buffed a little bit because Helm of the Overlord was really good when it came out, but then it kind of got nerfed because it was so popular, Beastmaster-like and these kinds of things. So then they changed it a little bit. Now it's really not as popular anymore, especially because a lot of the other normal creeps in the jungle are so good. You don't even need those ancients anymore. That's why this item really hasn't been bought as much. So they're kind of just buffing these overall. I wouldn't worry about the numbers too much. The items are just overall better. Just think about it that way. And then if they become popular, which maybe they will, I don't really see that this is going to be something that will become popular, but maybe Home of the Overlord will with Beastmaster and stuff. I still don't know that Wraith Pact, this item, is going to be popular. Maybe it's really broken and I have no idea why. Holy shit, this is just so good. It puts it over the edge, but I just don't think that's the case. But overall buffs to these items. Next, we're going to look at the neutral creeps. So these are the ones that were really, really broken. Basically, when all of the neutral creeps were changed, I think people just had, it took a little while for people to really understand which ones were broken and which ones were just kind of underwhelming. And it ended up being that there was two main neutral creeps that were completely just insane. The first one is the Harpy Scout. Basically, you could activate this Harpy Scout. It would have flying vision. It would give you an insane amount of vision. It was absolutely ridiculous. 1800 vision, especially at night, and flying vision. You could literally just smoke up with this thing and just fly it in. That was pretty slow, but it was just ridiculous. You put it on a high ground. Vision is so important, especially, in higher level Dota, but really in any level of Dota. And so it was completely broken. What they did is they made They made the ability basically take off, which you have to cast to give it that kind of ability. They made it cost more mana, so it basically drains mana. So you can't just have it, sitting up there for that long. And then the big part, which is the vision, was reduced overall. So the day vision is reduced and the night vision is reduced. So just nerfs this scout overall. Still pretty good, but just not completely broken like it was before. And then the other main creep that was completely ridiculous was this Dark Troll Summoner. And the main reason that this was broken is because you could spawn these skeletons, and then these skeletons would increase everybody or every unit's attack damage, and you could just spawn like skeletons, I think twice. And so you'd have like 6 of them, and you could literally just take a tower, with this creep alone. Like an Enchantress, you would pick Enchantress, you would find this creep in the jungle, you would just like send it to a tower, and you could do that twice, and it would just kill the tower. Like the tower's just dead. There was nothing that the enemy could do unless they had, some kind of wave clear. But if you could do that, at 4 minutes and 5 minutes, they usually don't have enough levels to even deal with it. It was just absolutely insane. So it definitely needed a nerf, and that's what they did. They nerfed the cooldown, they nerfed the duration, and they also made these skeleton warriors easier to kill. So they didn't nerf the damage necessarily, but you can't just have all these skeletons. They're a lot easier to kill, these kinds of things. So it's a necessary nerf. I think these neutral creeps are still good. I think they're probably still some of the best, if not the best. They're just not as insane and overpowered. So that's the neutral creep changes, all necessary changes, I think. And now we're going to go on to the hero changes. So again, like in almost every patch recently, they kind of changed some things and just, buff or nerf things a little bit that I don't think are really that big of a deal. But other ones were definitely necessary, and I'll mainly harp on those. So Arc Warden, small change, not really a big deal. Just the bottom of his base damage is not as wide of a range, so he just is more consistent with laning. Axe, his base regen's not as good, but that's really almost irrelevant. 0.25, not a big deal. This armor is a decent nerf. I mean, Axe is pretty good. Just not having as much armor on Berserker's Call is not that great, but I think once you get some of those stacks and you have this much armor anyway, it's not that big of a deal. You're still taking like 0 damage from right clicks when you use Berserker's Call, but it might be enough nerf. I mean, 5 armor is pretty significant. I don't think Axe was that broken, but probably in lower MMRs, it is pretty good. It's a pretty decent hero. Bane, one of the best supports this patch. Just his Fiend script, just not as good now. The channel time, like max duration, is just lower in early levels. So supports don't get as many levels. This guy's ult is going to be level 1, level 2 for a long time. So it's just not a max, duration 6-second stun through BKB at level 1. So it's just a little bit worse, but still pretty good. So Bloodseeker here, I think this isn't the shard. I believe this is actually the scepter. I think this is just a typo. This is one of the worst shards, or worst scepters, in the entire game, I think, if not the worst. It's absolutely ridiculous. It was just terrible. You would do pure damage to yourself and magic damage to the enemy, so you were like doing more damage to yourself than the enemy. It was just so dumb. It made no sense. It was basically a better version of Pudge's Rot, but just absolutely terrible and cost 4k gold. It was terrible. But now the shard does magic damage to yourself, does more damage to the enemies actually as well, and the cooldown is reduced. I believe this is the scepter. I'm pretty sure it's the scepter. Maybe I'm just high, but I think that's the case. But in any case, I don't know this is enough to make this better. Bloodseeker has kind of been on the up and up, so I don't know if it'll be popular this patch, but I don't know that this is enough to make this purchasable, but hey, maybe it is. Maybe it kind of puts it over that threshold and is actually good. Broodmother, small buff here, not a big deal. Chaos Knight was one of the most popular heroes in the patch. They basically changed the shard bonus range. So you could buy that shard, cast the Chaos Bolt, have that illusion. I think that was pretty good. The range really helped you just be able to throw that bolt in without really having to put your hero at risk and kind of just poke and prod. So the reduced cast range definitely hurts a lot there, but it's still pretty powerful. I mean, it basically does the same thing. The real thing that nerfed this hero, I think, is this Chaos Strike, no longer applying bonus damage to creep heroes and Roshan. That can be pretty big. I mean, it's not like fundamentally changing the hero in any direct way, but it just makes the hero's damage a little bit less, in general, to like things like the Lone Druid Bear, these kinds of things. Roshan as well. You're not just going to like destroy Rosh with all your illusions and all that kind of stuff. It just makes this hero a little worse overall. I still think this hero is really, really strong though. I don't think they nerfed anything super like fundamental to the hero. I mean, this is a good nerf, but I don't think it's just not as relevant in all stages of the game. Chen, they're actually buffing Chen, interestingly enough. I mean, they gave this hero some move speed, and Hand of God is a little bit better. Not fundamental changes, but this hero is pretty good. I mean, they did nerf the neutral creeps, but I still think this hero is probably going to be picked up in the major. Maybe not. Maybe I just, maybe Maybe Enchantress is still just better, I don't know, or maybe those neutral creep changes are enough to make these heroes irrelevant, I'm not sure. So interesting changes there. Crystal Maiden, just buffs overall. I don't really think this is going to make this hero any more picked more or anything like that. It's just not a great hero right now. Hasn't been that great for a while, but hey, maybe. I never know. You know, you never really know with these kinds of small changes where they could just put the hero over the edge, but I don't think that any of these things are going to do that for Crystal Maiden. It's just hero's just too slow, not dynamic enough. I think there's just fundamental problems with the hero that don't make it super relevant. DP definitely needed nerfs, and they did some nerfs that I think will definitely make this hero more balanced and probably may kill the hero in general. I think this is one of the most nerfed heroes in this patch. So basically, the shard fear duration is decreased by half a second. That's pretty relevant. I mean, that fear was really, really strong. So just having that extra half a second that you're not stunned basically is really good. For playing against Death Prophet, very bad for Death Prophet. And then the base health drain per second reduced from 16 at every level to 10, 12, 14, 16. That just makes this hero not as insane of a laner. See, one of the problems with this hero was just that you couldn't lane into it at all. So it was good at all portions of the game. The laning stage was insane. You couldn't trade. And then later on in the game, it's just like impossible to kill this hero. You could play it at pretty much every position in the game. It was kind of just way too powerful. And Spirit Siphon now is just a little bit worse early on in the game. For trading and things like that, you're still going to be a good laner, don't get me wrong, but it's just not as powerful. And then the real big nerf is that with the changes to the damage types from last patch, this ability Exorcism was doing double damage to towers, actually. So that was one of the biggest things that made this hero broken, and now it's just doing normal damage to towers. It's basically reverted. So doing 50% damage to buildings is not what it seems like. It doesn't actually make it like way worse. It makes it worse than it was in this last patch, but just basically makes it like it was before the patch change where it changed all the damage types. So it kind of reverts it back to normal is what it does. So I think Death Prophet, one of the biggest nerfs to this hero. I think this hero might be dead, mainly because of this, but also with these nerfs as well as Spirit Siphon. Disruptor, just a small buff, mana cost decreased in general. They're kind of trying to make this hero a little bit more relevant. Dragon Knight became kind of a popular, decent hero because of the fireball changes, so they're just nerfing it a little bit with the damage. I think that'll be kind of relevant. This hero is good because it can now farm, it can do more damage in fights, but it really relies on that damage from fireball. Like, this fireball is really the reason why this hero is good. So nerfing this, even though it's only 5 damage, it is damage per second, so that adds up to be more damage. I just think this could kill the hero. It doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal, but it could be a big enough deal because before this fireball change to like do more damage and things from the last patch, this hero was absolute F tier, like below F tier, like dog poop tier. It just was absolutely crap. So who knows? This might just make Dragon Knight dead as well. And then Earthshaker, mana cost reduced, just kind of making this hero a little bit better. Hasn't been super relevant. I think this hero is pretty good in pubs though, generally. Like if you want to play 4 position, definitely look to play Earthshaker. Pretty good hero. Ember Spirit. I don't think Ember Spirit was completely broken or anything, but they did buff this hero last patch. Now they're just reducing the damage overall of Sleight of Fist early on. Later, it's still very good. It just makes the laning not as crazy or the farming not as crazy. I think basically what you could do is you could kind of skip your other abilities. You could just max Sleight of Fist every single time, because every single lane almost, because now that it did full damage to creeps, you didn't really have to go for Flame Guard to farm. Like, you could just use this to farm. And now they're kind of changing that up a little bit. Like, I mean, it's still really good later on, so you can still max it. So I guess it's still kind of the same, but it's just not as good at harassing and these kinds of things in lane. So you might want to use at least a couple points in Flame Guard, these kinds of things. It just makes it a little bit worse early and that kind of stuff. So the laning prowess isn't just insane for this hero. Next, Enchantress, a hero that definitely needed to be nerfed. I'm not an Enchantress player. I actually don't know what it was before, but the Dominate Creeps, level 4, 5, 6, 6. Basically, there was a level requirement for dominating. I think they changed it a little bit. I actually don't remember what it was before, but it is definitely a nerf. I mean, this hero needed a nerf. They're probably just nerfing it so that you can't just like take that Troll Summoner thing at like level, you know, whatever it was, 2 or whatever it was that you could get it at. Or when you're level 3, you have that enchant at level 2 and just get it and just throw it at a tower like 4 minutes in and kill the tower, like half HP or something like that. So it just makes this hero a little bit worse. Enigma, general buff to Eidolons. Eidolons were probably, so if you compare Eidolons to a lot of other creeps, Eidolons are worth a lot, and they're not like super easy to kill, but they're generally relatively easy to kill, I think, in comparison to like Treants and stuff. Like, the Treants give like no XP, barely any gold, they're hard to kill. Eidolons are a lot different. I think they're easier to kill, they give more gold, XP, these kinds of things, so now they're just harder to kill, and they're not as worth killing. Huskar, a very good hero this patch. Just slight nerfs. I don't think this is going to make this hero like way worse, but the strength gain to regeneration, like the big problem with this hero is this hero snowballs really well, But now, because of the Ags, because of this, max health regeneration, because of the magic resistance, because of all these things, this hero scaled into the late game as like a real carry. And so that's why you were seeing it as carry, not just as mid. So it's not just a snowball hero. So not only will you crush the early game and like take Roche early and all these kinds of things, but you also are a good, decent late game hero and all these kinds of things, with all the way that the hero works, like I said, with Agnum Scepter and this max strength as being your regen and stuff. So just nerfing that a little bit makes this hero not as viable as a carry, a little bit more early game centric, these kinds of things, to just maximize on your early game snowball. But I don't know if that's enough to like kill the hero. I just think it's not as insane as it was. Keeper of the Light, another hero that really needed nerfed. Keeper of the Light was being played in support positions a lot and also mid. I've seen it stomp mid games before, just like blowing people up with this magic damage build. So the movement speed was reduced. That was another thing. This hero was flying around the map. Like it would buy Boots of Travel and just like go at like infinite movement speed. You feel like it had haste at all times. Maybe it even did. I don't know. It was like ridiculous movement speed. You could just never catch this hero. It was crazy. So that's definitely a nerf that was needed. Chakra Magic not restoring as much mana, definitely needed because obviously this is very good in general, but with Storm Spirit and other things like that were popular this patch, this Chakra Magic just made those heroes on the map constantly just so good. So definitely a needed nerf. And then the Blinding Light. This Blinding Light knockback, it was just so annoying that this hero has magic damage, it has mana restore, it has everything you need. It has heal, and then it also makes you, it like kind of has this mini stun that makes you, miss attacks. It's just ridiculous. So nerfing this a little bit is definitely good. Next, we have Lycan. Lycan was good a few patches ago, kind of has fallen off, but now they changed the base attack speed was increased, and the Wolf Shard, basically the damage on the Wolf Shard was increased, and the damage on the Wolves is increased as well. So just making this hero a little bit better with the Wolves. I don't know if that's enough in general, but we'll see with the Helm of the Overlord buffs and the changes in general, maybe this hero comes back into the meta. Medusa definitely needed a nerf as well. This hero has been popular for like a year plus. So they basically made Split Shot reduced the damage overall in the Split Shot, so it's just not as good for farming, not as good for dealing damage, all these kinds of things, just worse overall, which is good. And then Stone Gaze mana has been increased. I don't know that that's that relevant, but it is good because sometimes you're stunned and you just barely get your Stone Gaze off, especially early on when you don't have the big mana pool and they drain your mana very quickly. Then you might die in a lot of situations where you're just going to get this off at the last second. So that is kind of relevant there. Maybe late game it's not as big of a deal, but especially early on for ganking this hero. Necro, a very strong hero right now, so nerfs overall. Permanent health regen decrease. This was a pretty good thing with this hero that just, once you got a bunch of Reaper's Scythes in the beginning of the game, once you kind of, you had a few stacks there, you just had insane regeneration. You were impossible to kill. So nerfing this makes sense. It was very, very strong. Deathseeker, you would get this shard every single game, and you would get it as soon as possible, basically. So nerfing this overall pretty good. The cooldown is a little bit worse, so you can still use it on every creep wave. You're not going to use it like many times in fights, maybe only twice, where before you could use it maybe 3 times. I mean, obviously 14, 16, not a huge difference, but still important. And then the mana cost. This hero doesn't have mana issues, but hey, if you're ever at low mana for whatever reason, this might be a problem, then you can't use your Deathseeker. And then this is the big nerf here, I think, is that the Death Pulse heal is just lower overall, especially early on. But also later. I mean, it's 5 each time. But I think just overall, this heal is just not as good. And it's obviously amplified with your W, all these things. This is a very important nerf as well. It just makes the laning stage not as strong. And later on, it makes you a little bit easier to kill in general and not like supporting your team as much as well. So that's Necro. I don't know if these nerfs are enough to put this over the edge. Him over the edge is a bad hero now, but he's just not as good. He's not as crazy. Nyx, some slight buffs here. Not a big deal. Mana cost reduction, spike, radius increase, not a huge deal, but just a little bit better. This hero hasn't been super relevant since they took the break off of his ability. I think he was actually pretty strong a few patches ago, but just kind of has been on the downtrend. Omni Knight, probably one of the best heroes this patch, one of the best supports, just because of the way they changed Heavenly Grace. They made it like offer more, bonus strength and regen based on how much you're dispelling, which is insane. It also casts it on you as well as the person you're casting it on, so it was just really strong. This hero is really good. Phoenix hasn't been relevant for a while, so they did buff it just slightly. Primal Beast, probably the broken hero of the patch. If it's not Death Prophet or like Coddle or Tiny, it's Primal Beast. An insane hero right now. He was not that great, I guess, at the beginning of the patch. Maybe people just didn't know how to play him, but then they buffed him a couple times, and now he's absolutely insane. This hero is ridiculous. Like, you can't lane against this hero. So thankfully now Onslaught has an audible sound through fog of war, so you can actually tell when it's coming. So it's just, he doesn't just fly out of the trees, out of fog, and kill you. You actually know when it's coming, so you can prepare, dodge in and out, do whatever you need to, jump away, these kinds of things. So that's definitely a good and unique and kind of cool way to change the hero, because usually, they're just nerfing numbers. I like this change, though. It just makes it a little bit easier to lane against and know that it's coming. But that can be a very significant change. This hero might just not be good because of this. It's so easy to, pop EKB, get out, whatever it is. Uproar. Basically just nerfs to Uproar. Attack damage per stack decreased, move slow per stack decreased, damage threshold increased, so it's not as easy to get these stacks as well. So just a nerf overall to Uproar. Then Trample, the base damage reduced and attack damage percentage reduced as well. So just less damage overall in Trample. So the numbers overall in this hero has been nerfed. And then Rock Throw, no one ever buys this, so they just made it a little bit better. And then the talent, they also nerfed the talent a little bit as well. So just overall damage numbers nerfed, and this onslaught change, which is pretty kind of quality of life. So you don't just again, get surprised, get hit, get killed, full to zero because he's running at you, charging at you out of fog from behind trees, etc. Small Pudge buff, completely irrelevant. Let's just ignore it. They hate this hero. I don't know why. They just want this hero to be shit forever. Pugna, another very strong hero of the patch. They basically have just nerfed this hero overall in a bunch of different ways. The Decrepify duration talent decreased, cast range reduced for Decrepify, cooldown increased as well, so you can't use this a ton of times, especially early on. It's just not usable as much in lane, and then later on, it's just not as usable to save and these kinds of things, etc. And then the Nether Ward radius is decreased, which is really important because this 1600 range just felt like there was no way you could take a fight around this ward, and the ward was just so long. It just felt like it was forever. Like you just had to run so far away before you could cast any spell. Now, I know 200 range isn't a lot, but it's just a little bit smaller of a range. It's not as big of a deal. There are now some things that you could cast from outside this range and still hit people, and just a little bit of a nerf that I don't know if this, nerfs this hero overall. It's kind of nerfing things that the hero, Nether Ward, obviously it's really good, but there's other things about the hero, and Decrepify is really good as well. But I think the hero's still relevant. It's still good, especially as a support. Maybe it's not as good as as a mid, but I don't think it was really being played mid as much anyway. So it's pretty good as a support. I think it's still a good support, but just not as good. Sand King, one of the best offlaners right now. So the DPS on Sandstorm was decreased. The mana cost was increased, especially early on. Epicenter Shard, bonus damage per pulse, was decreased in half, so 50% of what it used to be. That's a pretty big nerf, I think, because this shard was really good now, and that's one of the main reasons this hero was picked. And then overall, the talents were just nerfed, like Sandstorm damage, Sandstorm radius, and Sandstorm blind and slow. I think this Sandstorm was one of the biggest reasons this hero was good, because once you hit 25, this blind and slow was absolutely ridiculous. Like, you literally couldn't fight into Sandstorm, and this hero obviously can buy Yules, other things like this. You can just, BKB, you can do whatever, just get out of the dust, unless they have a sentry, and you could even have a gem yourself or have sentries yourself. It's just there's nothing you can do to this hero. You also get tanky, you have a stun, you have an insane ultimate. You just offer so much, especially once you hit 25. So overall nerfs, I think this hero's still good, but we'll see if it's enough to kill the hero. Slark, one of the worst heroes in the game right now. I feel like this hero has barely been relevant for years, honestly. It comes into relevancy a little bit here and there, and then I feel like as soon as it does, it gets instantly nerfed. Something happens where they're like, this is too strong, so we're instantly nerfing it because it's just causing havoc in pubs. So they actually increased the mana cost on Dark Pact a few patches ago, maybe a year ago, but maybe, I feel like it was a year ago, but maybe it was not that long ago. But anyway, I think it was good a year ago, and then as soon as it was good, they increased the mana cost on this ability. But now they reverted it. I don't know if they reverted it back to what it was. I thought it was 60 mana before, but maybe it was 65. But anyway, it's decreased here. And then the outgoing damage is the same later on, but early on, the damage is increased. So that is it's one of these where you're still taking less damage yourself, but now you're taking more damage on yourself. So it's kind of a buff, but a little bit kind of annoying to have this casted early, but at least you're doing more harass damage. You can kind of secure creeps a little bit easier, these kinds of things. It's also, a small buff that makes it a little bit more worthwhile to maybe put points into your other abilities. You're not going to, skill pounce, but maybe essence shift, you can get, maybe you can think about getting 3 points in Essence Shift instead of just maxing Dark Pact every game. Because now, a couple levels in Dark Pact is a little bit better than it used to be, etc., etc. So, in any case, that's Dark Pact. I don't think that's enough to make the hero relevant, but in any case, small buffs to a hero that was really bad. Spectre, other small buffs to a really bad hero. HP regen increased, agility increased, and radius threshold increased, which is pretty important because this was like dispersion and what's the other ability? Oh, I always forget. The two passive abilities based on this hero were nerfed and nerfed and nerfed, like the range and everything. It was just nerfed forever. So now it's like, dispersion's actually pretty good because 800 range is pretty good. You want this range to be here because, people could be easily damaging you from outside of 800 range. Like it happens. And so then just dispersion is just completely nullified because of that. It was 700 range before. That's definitely easy to do. But now 800 range, a little bit harder to get outside of that range, even though it's still possible. Storm Spirit, another really strong hero right now. Base armor reduced, it just makes the laning not as good because you often rely on like right-clicking trading a lot. So this is really important in lane because this hero is like a pretty hard hero to stop laning. Like it's not like a lane stomper by any means. You can definitely crush lanes with this hero, but it's not like insane, but it definitely relies on right-clicking, harassing down. Once you get a point in each of your abilities, you can definitely like combo people down, do a ton of damage. So it just makes this hero not as good in lane because of that armor reduction. And then the mana regen talent is reduced by 0.25. Not a huge deal. I don't think that's all that relevant. Overload damage decreased by 10 at the end, the last level, and even in the early levels. I think this is more relevant early on because 10 damage, over time, not the biggest of deal later, but early on, it's really a big deal. That 10 damage is a lot of damage that you're getting reduced for each overload hit that you're hitting. And you usually max Remnant on this hero. So if you just keep overload at level 1, that's 10 damage less every time you use it. And this is your main way that you lane. So the laning on this hero is just overall worse. Less armor, less way to trade just by right clicks alone, and then overload just does less damage overall. So your overall laning is just not as good. Sven, kind of a dead hero, has been for a while. This hero was good for like a small patch maybe 6 months ago. Maybe even before TI, maybe so even like 8-10 months ago, whatever it was. But then it got killed like almost instantly. So they're just, buffing this overall. Better movement speed, shard armor increased, stun duration rescaled a little bit early on to be a little bit better, and then mana cost decreased overall. So small buffs, I don't think it's enough. It's kind of either a Sven patch or it's not. Either this hero farms super quick and just takes over the game and kills everybody so quickly and you can't do anything about it, or he's not very good. Like it's one or the other, and I just don't think this is enough to put him over the edge. He kind of needs like big map changes, big gameplay changes, almost like Alchemist. He needs like big changes to put him into the meta or to take him out of the meta. And right now I just don't think that's going to be enough. TA has been a pretty good hero overall for a long time, actually, kind of similar to Medusa. TA was broken like 10 months ago, got some small nerfs, but it's still relatively relevant. So now Refraction, just not as good with the bonus damage later on, and this is really important for the 25 talent because a lot of people think, maybe lower MMR players think that the Bash talent's good, which it is. But the Refraction talent actually is the better one because you just have insane damage. You can't die with these insane refraction charges, and you do so much damage. But now that damage is reduced overall. It's not a ton, but it's significant. It's enough. That 15 damage with every attack can end up being pretty significant, especially with the fact that you have minus armor, you buy Daedalus, these kinds of things. So that 15 damage can add up. And so I don't know if it's enough for this hero to be irrelevant. Like I said, that's kind of the theme of the patch. I'm not sure. We'll have to wait to see with the major and how pubs shake out, but it's definitely a understandable and logical nerf. Timbersaw, pretty good hero overall. It seems like this hero's hit or miss, but when it does hit, it's so good. So they just kind of made Whirling Death a little bit worse. The percentage decrease from 12 to 10, and then the duration of that stat loss is a little bit lower. Not super big. I don't think it's a big deal. Just the stat loss percentage, I think, is more significant than the duration, but it is still significant. I think this hero might be dead because of this, actually, because 2% is a lot. But we'll see. We'll see. I don't think the hero was like broken by any means, but that nerf is pretty significant. Tinker, really broken like a few patches ago before 7.31. They killed the hero, and I don't think this is enough to bring it back. Strength increased by 1, not a big deal. Mana cost reduced, still not a big deal. This hero just doesn't farm well enough, and just the TP time and all that kind of stuff is just really bad right now, I think. Tiny, another hero, one of the biggest heroes, probably one of the top 3 heroes that was broken this patch, so we'll see if this is enough to reduce, to get this hero out of the meta, or at least make it not as insane. So they nerfed the tree grab building damage, which everyone was kind of asking for. So instead of max level at 100%, it's at 85. That's definitely significant. It's just not going to be shredding through buildings as much. But it's not going to be shredding through buildings as much because also the grow tree attack damage multiplier is now 10% less. And the talent here at 15 for 40% grow damage was moved to 20. So overall, not only is this hero doing a lot less damage, especially to buildings, but now it has to wait to level 20 to get this damage talent that just makes it hit insane. So I think the timings of this hero are just kind of moved a little bit later, and it does a little bit less damage. So we'll see if that's enough to take this hero out of the meta. I still think it's a very good hero. I still think, that shard being at 15, you can still cleave through people. You can still do a lot of tower damage. You can still farm really quickly. It's just not as crazy and as insane as it was. And that could be enough to take this hero out of the meta. Tree throw, not as big of a deal on the volley. I don't think that's a huge deal. It's actually kind of like a little bit of a buff there, but I think that's something we can ignore. In any case, I think Tiny was kind of already on the verge of being solved in a little bit because it was so popular. It was still good, but I think pro teams were solving it a little bit. I think this might be enough to take this hero out of the meta in the major. If anything, maybe it'll be seen more as a mid or like a playmaking, like the damage, like one where it's not a carry anymore. It's like a mid, it's a 4 position, whatever else it is, something more where the damage is good, but it focuses more on the positioning, on the stun, on the magic stuff. Troll Warlord, I have the opinion, I've said this in other patches and other videos, that this hero is not going to be relevant until they change the ultimate. The ultimate, you just can't have a hero where you lose control of your hero. Like, you just can't have that. So this hero, basically, they just small buffs. Melee attack time improved, and then they just fixed a battle trance bug, I guess, where you wouldn't properly target somebody out of or in Fog of War, which may be one of my problems, because playing this hero always felt super weird. Like when you pressed ultimate, it sometimes felt like you should chase guys, but then you couldn't, and I don't know. So maybe it was this bug, and with this bug fixed, it will kind of change my understanding or opinion of the ultimate, but I still think with this ultimate the way it is, where you lose control of your hero in some sense, I just don't think it's going to be good. I just don't think it's ever going to be enough to be super relevant in any patch, because like I said, I just don't think losing control of your hero is ever going to be something that you can bounce for unless the hero's broken in some other crazy way. Undying, a pretty good support right now. So overall nerfs, cast range reduced on Tombstone, and zombie spawn interval increased, which means the zombies actually spawn less often. So this is a needed nerf. I think this hero was pretty broken right now. I kind of think it was flying under the radar, but when you played against it and you were against a good Undying player, it just makes it's so hard to fight into that Tombstone. It makes team fighting so hard. Warlock, they've been trying to buff this hero overall and make this hero relevant. It's just never been relevant. I mean, it's good at like carrying low MMR pubs, but that's it. It just hasn't been relevant. They need to change, not Fatal Bonds, the whatever it is, the slow ability. I don't even know what its name is, because who really cares? They need to just get rid of that ability or give it some other ability, I think. Change his hero fundamentally. Give him something else to help him actually be a real hero. They increased the golem strength or health, but whatever. Not a big deal. It's not going to make the hero relevant. Winter Wyvern here, Arctic Burn duration increased, and then the secondary projectile speed increased. This isn't, I think, a huge deal. The Arctic Burn duration is definitely important. In the lane, other things like that, you just have more harass damage, more ways to just last longer. I think it already feels like this ability lasts forever in the lane, just so annoying to play against. So who knows? Maybe that could make Winter Wyvern relevant. I don't think this hero is that bad. I think this hero is pretty good, actually. So look out for Winter Wyvern in the future, in the major, etc. Witch Doctor, they've been trying to buff this hero kind of like Warlock here. It's just one of these supports that seems to stomp pubs, but it's just never relevant in pro. So they're just making this hero a little bit better. Again, damage per second increased. Who knows? Maybe this hero will eventually become playable in high MMR. This is definitely something where, honestly, if you want to play support, especially in low MMR, like anything below 3 or 4K, just pick Witch Doctor. This hero does insane damage. It's absolutely ridiculous, especially now with this buff, Maledict, holy. You can skill this level 1 and just you and the carry can click people and they just die. And then lastly, we have Zeus here. Zeus, I think they killed this hero. I know like Thompson's been playing it and stuff, and it seems okay, but I just don't think this hero does damage anymore. Like without getting your shard, I mean, you need your shard. Once you get your shard, but like otherwise, I mean, I don't think this jump is all that great. I think they should just literally get rid of the shard ability. Just honestly make that ability and the heavenly jump, just combine it together. Put it together, match it together. Maybe it'll be too strong, and then you can nerf the numbers. But give this hero the jump, but also make the jump allow you to do more damage. Just do that. Just mash them together. I don't see anything wrong with that. But in any case, they made the jump distance increase. So now it's 500 instead of 450. Arc lightning damage increased as well. And then lightning bolt is a little bit quicker to cast, 0.3 seconds. That's a pretty good significant change because sometimes you just barely get it off or these kinds of things. It's definitely relevant. Cast points are almost always relevant. Any kind of small change in cast points can be a huge difference. I don't think this is enough to make this hero relevant, though. I just think since the change with the shard, I just think this hero is dumpster tier right now. So that is the patch 7.3 7.1c changes, and I think these are all pretty good changes. I think they nerfed and buffed some things that were pretty good. They buffed heroes that were really weak, like Spectre, like Slark, even Tinker, even though people don't like Tinker, they buffed Tinker. They nerfed Tiny. They nerfed the neutral creeps. They nerfed Medusa. They nerfed Storm. They nerfed Primal Beast. They nerfed Necro. They nerfed Huskar a little bit. They nerfed Enchantress, Dragon Knight, Death Prophet definitely nerfed. CK a little bit. I think CK, this is not super relevant, but yeah, it's nerfed a little bit. Bane nerf. They pretty much nerfed everything that was pretty good. Desolator Scotty being bought like every game, small changes and nerfs to that. So I think this was a pretty good overall patch. Obviously not huge. You're not going to get a huge patch before a major like this, but I think this is pretty good. We'll see what happens with the meta development in the major and in pubs in general. So as always, guys, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all of those kinds of things. If you enjoyed the video and want to see more content into the future, go to my Patreon and support me there if you like these videos. And like I said, and want to help me make more content, you can also go there for coaching. If you want to request coaching, I do that as well. I usually like to coach, lower MMR players and help them get a little bit better and more fundamental understanding of the game. And as always, join the Discord if you haven't already to request replay reviews, those kinds of things, and build our community as well for community games on Saturday. So as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.